For a global business update, Rotus Odiri joins us now. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, everybody. Good to have you. Good to be here. Start of a new week. Whole lot to get into. It's absolute smorgasbord of data across the week that we're expecting from different channels. We kick off, I think later today, we're going to get, as far as what to watch this week, we're going to get data from India. Their July inflation figures, Poland July inflation, Foxconn, that is a supplier to Apple and a number of other tech firms, they're going to report their quarterly earnings. Tuesday, we get China retail sales. China, we continue to see a lot of weak data as well as industrial data from China. Colombia's second quarter GDP, Canada's July inflation, preliminary second quarter GDP from Japan. Wednesday, you've got flash GDP estimates for the Eurozone. UK inflation, very key there. We saw June, was it 7.9%? So looks like Mr. Andrew Bailey's medicine might be working there because inflation is coming down. Then you've got a host of earnings on Wednesday. Carlsberg, the beer maker. You've got Cisco in tech, JD.com in tech, Tencent. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then Target in the United States in retail. Thursday, Norway is going to give their own benchmark interest rate decision. I think their rates are 3.75. They said they may not see a rate hike until August. We'll see what happens on Thursday. I mean, we're in August, sorry. We see a hike on Thursday. Lenovo, as far as what's going on in the electronic space, good to see what the temperature is with their earnings. Also, Walmart. Friday, Malaysia Q2 GDP, and then we've got more earnings from John Deere, the makers of the agricultural tech as far as tractors and so on. Estee Lauder in the cosmetics industry as well. So that's what we're going to be expecting. A lot of data to come this week. Asian stocks are down. There's still lots of worries over China with respect to the property sector, with respect to whether or not we're going to see any stimulus coming from China. It looks like they're still holding off on whether or not we're going to get that stimulus. So that's weakening stocks to start the week. Wheat prices climbed because apparently Russia did follow through on its threats with respect to ships coming through the Black Sea. This is the Sukru Okan. They told the ship to stop before it was heading over to the Ukrainian ports. It didn't. They opened fire on it, and then they allowed Russian soldiers to board the ship with, I think, through helicopter. They inspected it and then allowed it to continue. But wheat prices did jump on that news. Goldman Sachs is saying that the United States is going to start cutting rates in the second quarter of 2024. We've seen inflation continue to decelerate in the United States. We might get that soft landing that's been said. They're not seeing any more rate hikes in 2023. The last one we saw, I think, is the last one for July, and then they're going to be seeing incremental 25 basis point cuts. That is their forecast. I mean, they could be right. They could be wrong. Mark Zuckerberg says that Elon Musk is not a serious person with respect to their cage fight. They actually released text messages between the two of them. I didn't think it was real, but then it was later confirmed that Musk did in fact text Zuckerberg asking him to practice jiu-jitsu or whatever in his backyard. So it says, I think we can all agree Elon isn't serious and it's time to move on. I offered a real date for the fight. Dana White of the UFC offered to make this a legit competition for charity. Elon will not confirm a date, then says he needs surgery, and now he's asking to do practice rounds in my home. If Elon ever gets serious about a real date and official events, he knows how to reach me. Otherwise, it's time to move on. I'm going to focus on competing with people who take this sport seriously. So it looks like Elon Musk has just been blowing hot air about promoting this fight, and it's not going to happen. Just got some breaking news about MTN. Apparently, they are selling a minority stake in their fintech business to MasterCard. I just saw this just not a few minutes ago, but Bloomberg was reporting it. So MasterCard is going to be buying a minority stake in their fintech business, which of course is valued at 5.2 billion. So that's for Africa. Now we get, of course, to the Naira. With what we saw released from the central bank, the Naira is projected to be put under further pressure going forward. Why is that? Of course, because it's now been seen after 8 years of data was dumped on Thursday or Friday that the reserves are not what we thought they were. So if we go through a couple of those metrics and we take a look at, I think, the external reserves. So what was reported in the 2022 financials for the CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, was 32.4 billion. But if you back out the 7.5 billion that is in that securities lending that it did with JP Morgan for cash, collateral backed by the reserves, 7.5 billion, you take out 6.8 billion in currency forwards. That leaves you with 18.1. Real quick, currency forwards are essentially future obligations to settle currency sales. So if I'm the CBN and Doctor wants $1 million and I say, I can't sell it to you now, Doctor, I'll give it to you in October. Ayo wants $1 million, I'll give Ayo in September, I give Doctor in October. Rufai wants $1 million as well, I give him in November. Those are forward obligations that I have to meet later on. So if I'm reporting that I have $10 million in FX reserves, those are gross reserves. My net reserves, I have to back out the $3 million that I owe to Dr. Ayo and Rufai going forward. So that now is telling speculators that the central bank does not have the firepower that it needs in order to defend the currency, which again highlights the fact that the fixed exchange rate and the peg that we had in the last administration was not working, and it was not sustainable. And I'm going to do a visual here to explain what a fixed peg is, a managed float is, and a complete float. This is a fixed float. This is a fixed rate. This is what we do when if I use a steering wheel as an example. It's fixed, I'm controlling it. This is a managed float where I take one hand off and I'm still using the other hand to try to control the currency and sell. This is a complete float where I take my hands off the steering wheel completely. It is being suggested that is possibly what needs to happen now, because the FX supply going into the market is not there, and all the demand is being pushed to the parallel market. We continue. There's, of course, we all knew about the overdraft to the federal government. That's now just has been confirmed by the CBN. We already knew about the ways and means. We already knew what was going on. So 1.1 trillion of debts. This is on top of the 46 trillion total for 2022. CBN Act Section 38, only 5% of prior year's revenues is what you can extend. 2021 revenues, this is incredible, 5 trillion naira. And yet you spent about $10 billion at 4 something. That is almost 90% of your revenues in 2022 you spent on fuel subsidies. So your statutory limit was 252 billion, exceeded the limit by 22.9 trillion. That is debt that needs to be paid going forward. Then there was also this credit losses. The CBN needs to now come. I mean, we have an acting governor. We probably need to have an interview. We need to get some more clarity. There was a credit loss expense of 875 billion, a 75% climb. The financials didn't really explain what they were. Now, to be clear, the CBN still declared it was a profit, in the results for 2022. But these credit losses, I don't know, is it the Anchor Borrowers program? What could it be? We need to get more clarity on that. And then staff loans. We saw a big jump in staff loans for CBN staff. For year on year, from when I was looking at the financials, from 2021 through to 2022, 120% jump to 40 billion. If you go back to 2014, it's over a 200% climb in staff loans. Now, back to loans and back to debt. Does anybody remember this from Godwin Obaseki in 2021? Let's go down memory lane here.
Printing money, yes.
We say remove subsidy. They say no. This April, next week again, we'll go to Abuja, we will share. By the end of this year, our total borrowings, the total we have borrowed is going to be in excess of 15 to 16 trillion. And my worry is that we wake up one day, like Argentina, the naira will be 1,000, 2,000, it will be moving. Because you can imagine a family, you don't have money coming in, you're just borrowing and borrowing and borrowing without any means or idea of how to pay back. And nobody is looking at that. Everybody is looking at 2023.
That was in 2021. Everybody's talking about palliatives and how you're going to extend help for welfare. Every naira that goes towards paying debts, there's something in economics called opportunity costs. That is the cost of opportunity foregone. Every naira that goes to paying down, almost 70 trillion now in debts, your 46 trillion plus your 29 ways and means, is 1 naira less that cannot go to a palliative. Every naira that goes to debts that Nigeria owes, that was built up over 8 years in the last administration, of which President Tinubu has to take some accountability because he told Nigerians to vote for the person who extended that debt, is one more naira that cannot go to extending the minimum wage. Every naira that goes towards the debt or servicing that debt is 1 naira that cannot go towards capital expenditure. That was 2021. Nigeria now, with the debt burden that the country is facing, is under some serious pressure. Guinness Nigeria, they just put out a notice, I think it was last night or the night before, essentially because of what happened with GSK. So rumors floating around that Guinness Nigeria is set to exit as well. Of course, we saw their FX losses. They basically said misleading and inaccurate publication. Guinness Nigeria PLC is not shutting down operations. Guinness remains resolute and committed to Nigeria. It reminded me of GSK because I heard Pastor Tunde Bakare saying that Nigeria is on a downward slope over the last 60 days. And I'm wondering what the slope could have been over the last 8 years. GSK, the collapse, for some reason, folks seem to think that the collapse happened in the last 60 days. This is a numerical picture of what GSK was facing. When President Buhari came into office, GSK's half-year revenue for 2015 was 15.4 billion naira. As of half-year 2023, 8 years later, it was 7.7 billion, a 50% drop, basically cut in half. And what was the company saying it was facing? FX issues. So, by speaking of President Buhari, I think we have a clip. Let's take another trip down memory lane, an interview that he gave as well.
Our debt stock at the time was about 12 trillion. Now it is about 32 trillion. Inflation rate was about 9%. It is now sitting about over 15%. Unemployment rate was about 8.19%. It is now 33.28%. Exchange rate was about 197 naira to $1. Is way over 400 naira to $1. So people will look back economically.
The president's response to that, we didn't get that. His response was, I don't believe your numbers. Your calculations are not correct. And then he said everybody should go to farm. Look, just my final point on this is that I remember Afenifere about 2 or 3 weeks ago wrote a letter saying that Nigeria should go and seek debt forgiveness from international creditors. In the same notes, Afenifere also said that Nigeria should not raise electricity tariffs. The 3 most dangerous subsidies that put this country where it is now: FX subsidy, electricity subsidy, and the fuel subsidies. We must look back from where we're coming from to find out where we are today.
I mean, truth has to be told. You see, you can't fool yourself for too long. Before you know it, people will tell you you're fooling yourself. And I'm so happy this is happening at a time the same APC government fought against subsidy removal in 2012. They are the ones in power now. And you can see all the problems they have created in the last 8 years, and they are still creating. A very good point. I'm happy the CBN finally brought out its books. The books they couldn't release before because they knew what they were doing. And I'm happy about it. And see, we floated in 2016, and this has always been my argument against a float. A float on paper, very good. A managed float, very good. But for nations that have a better economy, that have things that will bring dollar into the economy, it will be good on nations like America and the UK. There are factors of production that work there. But for a highly dollar-dependent economy like ours, with a structure of economy that is problematic, a float causes problem. In 2016, we floated. We remember the results. Just like what we're having today. It went up to 500. The naira in 2016 when we floated. It was when we had to go get money to buffer that we started to fight back. But because the economy is not balanced and the structural problem is not balanced, the structural problem is still evident in the economy, then we went back to square one in no time. So it is obvious now that the CBN, yes, you might want to blame the CBN, but who I will blame is President Buhari because he's the #1 man. There is nothing that you've seen in that CBN book that he didn't know about. The President Buhari under APC ruined it. And with the measures and the impulse President Tinubu is continuing with now, trying to remove all of those things over the years, then it becomes problematic for us. And that's what we are saying. And that's why we're saying tread with caution. What are going to be the solution? We need money. The sad reality is we have to buy the pill. Nobody's probably going to give us debt forgiveness. We have to still borrow. Probably concessionary loans. Borrow till we can structure our economy better, to be able to attract foreign direct investment and the likes. Borrow till we can stabilize things and now start to track back on the things we've done before. But if we don't do that, we'll plunge people into problems. And that's what you're seeing. It's evidence.
Well, I just very quickly wrote this. My thought or comment was, I'll just ask a question with regards to the acting governor of the CBN's comment around the fact that undocumented remittances, diaspora remittances, is one of the reasons for this free flow of the naira against the dollar. What's your take on that? And what's the impact of the CBN's option for you to receive remittance in local currency, in naira? Has that impacted in any way? Is this just an excuse by the CBN?
It's an excuse.
Yes,
because, in fact, think about it intuitively. He's saying that money coming from overseas is being diverted into the black market, and that is causing the rates to expand.
No, that's not it.
That is supply. I mean, think about it. If your supply is going into the black market, will the rates not come down? So that didn't make any sense whatsoever at all.
This is the first time.
Highlight that.
First time in 7 years that the CBN is publishing his statements.
Which is
What
shocking.
does the law say? The CBN Act 2007 says you must publish your statements within 2 months after the end of a financial year. Now we have these accumulated reports. That is something that should be investigated. Why is the CBN operating, running accounts as if it's a secret society? Shrouding financial statements in secrecy.
Because President Buhari
That is
allowed
why it is now important that President Tinubu has now assigned a special investigator to go through those books with a fine-tooth comb. You've talked about how, our reserves are encumbered. That's how to put it, perhaps. But another thing there is that the CBN is declaring a profit of 103 billion. That's not even up to the amount of money that the National Assembly wants to use to buy vehicles. That's what CBN is declaring as a profit. Meanwhile, they have borrowed over 3 trillion naira, about 3.1 trillion, not to talk of other encumbrances. So those are the things to look out for. And what is the implication? It means that, their capacity to manage the monetary space will be even more complicated. That's one. Number two, you left out the Philippines in what to expect this week. Interest rate rises, reports from New Zealand, from the Philippines, and then more importantly today, inflation figures coming out of India. Finally, let me talk about rice. China, the largest exporter of rice in the world, is now saying that there are issues in the northeastern part of the region due to heavy rainfall. And so they have to manage what they export. And before now, we have talked about India banning non-basmati rice. We've talked about food nationalism in Malaysia. All of this will add to the cost of food, to the spread of hunger in the world. As for Zuckerberg and Elon Musk says he has a back problem, back pain, and he needs to go and do to do a surgery. And he's asking Zuckerberg to say, okay, let me come to your backyard. Let's have a practice bout. Zuckerberg is saying, no, I want to practice my jiu-jitsu. Well, it's good to see these tech giants, these billionaires entertaining us. It's just entertainment. I don't think they are really serious about any physical combat. But thank you very much, Ruth.
Thank you so much.